Our guest today is a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie who's afraid of heights. And that sounds fun, but think about it. When you want to do something, but you're afraid to do it, when you do it and you're afraid to fail, when you don't do it because you're afraid, all those things get in the way of success, get in the way of peace, get in the way of our lives. And that's what we're going to talk about. It's Purpose Under Pressure with John Liebler next. The heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people, business folk like you and me. We just kind of swing our feet out of bed in the morning, put them on the floor and go to work. And then there's those pressures that always seem to crop up and try to knock us down. And so that's what this show is all about. It's Purpose Under Pressure. Don't forget to like the show, follow it if you would, subscribe if you are inclined. If you're back and you liked it once before, let's figure out a way to tell someone else about it, because that's how we're going to make a difference in other people's lives. So thank you very much for your follows and subscribes. It really does make a difference. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They provide sales training, business growth opportunities for businesses that are trying to grow, that are driven by revenue, that are trying to make a difference on purpose. Sandler does it on purpose. The Ruby Group really does it on purpose. And if that's the kind of business you have, you'll do yourself a favor by reaching out to them. You can find them online at therubygroup.sandler.com. Welcome to Purpose Under Pressure. My guest today, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I think you're going to enjoy this show. His name is John Liebler. He's the founder and owner of RSC Insights. They are a company that helps businesses grow in all sorts of directions in any way that he can. Self-proclaimed Swiss Army knife of business, also a adrenaline junkie who doesn't like heights, which got me thinking, wow, that's the way you ought to be. And so I'm excited to introduce you to John Liebler. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Great intro. You should do this for a living.
So they just don't pay you much for it. That's the problem. But I'll keep on trying. Thanks for that. I'm interested first, John. You're a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie that doesn't like heights. What does that mean? I know what it means, but it took me a while to think about it real quick, and I love it. But what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I only came to that conclusion probably about 2 years ago. And I don't know how much we'll get into my background, but I did one thing for a long time, right? Because that's what you do, right?
Boy, that sounds familiar. Yep.
But I remember my boss telling me that if she didn't keep me uncomfortable, that I would get bored. So she kept throwing projects at me to keep me uncomfortable. And then later in my life, I've realized that, people like to climb mountains. Oh, here comes the sun. Welcome to Ohio. The sun's shining through. I love it. People drive cars that are fast because they get that adrenaline, or jump off of mountains. And I don't like heights. I was in the Army and rappelling was not my thing. But my adrenaline rush is jumping into projects that are uncomfortable, that need to be figured out, that are a puzzle. And that's where I get my rush. And so as we talk about, one's life and how does one become successful, and depending on what your definition of success is, for me, I'm getting that rush out of solving a problem, either for myself or somebody else. And that's just the easiest way for me to explain it.
And so I think there's a lot of business owners and people that are in the same boat that have done things for a long time, looking to do something else, and they're going to want to know how you can help them. And I think the best way to explain that is to ask you this. Your purpose, though, isn't to be an adrenaline junkie at the top of a mountain. That's almost a hindrance. Like, sometimes isn't the thing that gets in our way our passions and our inner flaws and things of that sort. What are you trying to accomplish? And then let's talk about how that gets in the way or even fires you up. What are you trying to do in your life?
What am I trying to do in my life?
What's your purpose? Yeah,
it's interesting. You sent over, full disclosure, a couple like what we're going to talk about without actual questions. And
sure.
One of the things you ask is, what is your why?
Yeah.
And I believe that's one of the most fundamental questions business owners, right? If we all listen to Simon Sinek, that's one of the classic lines, but also individuals should ask, what is your purpose?
Got to.
And it creates a lot of thought, right? Most people just go through life just doing what comes their way.
That's right.
Instead of truly defining their purpose. And this morning I'm going to run. I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to say to Bryan, right? One, full disclosure, I'm primarily motivated by fear. Fear of letting people down, fear of not paying the bills, fear of, whatever it happens to be. And I think that's similar for a lot of people,
Similar,
right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, but coupled with that, my love language is acts of service, right? And so you put those things together, and my why is to try to become valuable, to have a purpose for somebody else, and then help them solve whatever problem they want or they have. Um, we talked a little bit about a book I'm writing. We don't have to get into it, but one of the title of the book is Life Lessons of a Slightly Neurotic Overthinker with a Superhero Complex. That's a real thing.
Written by
I'm the
you.
guy
Yes.
that's driving down the street, right? Sees somebody in trouble, stops the car in the middle of the road and goes and help. Is it because I'm a wonderful person? It's probably because I'm slightly, I have, a little narcissism, or I just want to help, or I feel that compelling, but it plays out in every aspect of my life.
And so is that where the adrenaline comes from, at least as far as business, is that you want so badly to help people and to be a part of their growth, and yet it's scary? Is that what drives you? What fear drives you there? That drive that you have is very common.
Yes.
And yet many people, John, will drive by that person on the road. And that's okay too. That's them.
Sure.
The purpose to help people is almost the same with every single person I talk to. But you have a different way of actually going out and doing it. You're doing it in a way that maybe even frightens you a little bit. And I'm interested in digging into that a little bit.
Well, it's a combination of things, right? There, and we can probably spend 3 hours talking about ikigai, or talking about strength finders, right? Leaning into your strengths and all these things, or finding a job that, that pays you money, that you love, that you're good at, that serves a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me. I happen to be pretty good at figuring out things, right? I can take complex puzzles and put them together. I can, just the way my brain works, I'm connecting lots of dots all the time. That's the overthinker part of me. I go play pickleball, and I drive everybody crazy because I'm like, well, 3 shots from now, this is going to happen, right? Like, John, just play the game, right? But when directed in a way that's helpful, it becomes very helpful, right? And then when you think about the way the brain works, and dopamine, and people play games on their phone because they get a reward, and the reward makes them happy, so they do it again. Well, for me, when I solve a problem, someone says thank you. That's a huge dopamine injection for me. And I want to do it again. I want to do it again. And I want to do it again. Now, the problem is once the puzzle's been solved, those things come less. So now I'm looking for another thing where I can solve the problem, so I get all that constant dopamine injection.
Yeah. It's very familiar. Very, very familiar. Maybe, that sounds like you and I might have had the same, another brother from another mother, whatever.
We have the same parents that told us they didn't love us or something.
Without us knowing it. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're never going to amount to anything. So what are the business problems that people have that you've seen that you feel like you're able to help, or that maybe you just can't? Like, what are people that are listening right now going, wonder if he's talking about me? What is the common thing that you've seen that you, not just that you can help people with, but people need help with?
Yeah, no, that is such a fabulous question. And, I spent the first 2/3 of my career in a large company that had lots of resources. And the biggest problem we had was getting out of our own way, or red tape, or all those other big corporate problems. Over the last 7 or 8 years, working now with smaller businesses, call them small to medium-sized businesses, it's a completely different problem, right? It's resource constraint. And then how do my logo, so to speak, is people plus process equals results, right? You need to have great people, but great people in the absence of repeatable processes, the people can't maximize their abilities. And so to answer your question directly, what makes you great as a small business owner is that entrepreneurial spirit, that the ability to jump in, roll up your sleeves, and do things. But as your business begins to grow, being a single-minded individual starts to hurt you rather than help you. How do you manage your time? How do you start to trust people? How do you delegate? Those are all the pieces that seem to hinder businesses as they start to hit a tipping point. Now, the tipping point is different for lots of people, but having rigorous processes that are repeatable, and then how do you evaluate those people you're delegating to build a team? That's a very general way of what's the problem.
So do you find that you're helping businesses, or do you find that you're helping people? Are you helping businesses overcome business issues, or people overcoming personal things then to help their business? What is your role in that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? And that's why when you ask me what I do, and it's very hard to explain, because am I a business coach? Am I a leadership coach? Am I a process guy? A little bit of everything,
Kind of
right? I have
everything. Yeah.
failed so much in my life, right? And then figured out ways to overcome it. I've had great people guide me. I have been able to overcome my limitations through learning how to be very good at creating processes and taking great notes and doing follow up. That now I think I'm in a position to lend some of that insights to other people that will help them grow their business. So there are great leaders that are phenomenal at leading their teams that are not necessarily very good at strategy planning or very good at
Yeah.
or project management or time management. I mean, oh my goodness, how many people I sit next to and they'll look at their phone, they'll have
If I only had time.
32,000 little red bubbles of emails they haven't read, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that gives me agita. There are other people that are brilliant innovators, but don't know how to communicate, don't know how to build a team, right? So to have all those skills becomes very difficult. And I'm in a rare position where I'm not great at anything, but I am that Swiss Army knife where I can support pretty much a lot of areas of weakness as it relates to businesses.
And do you think, you just said you failed a lot? When I was talking to you earlier, I talked about how much I thought you'd succeeded. Interesting that I see all this success, and your first thing is, look, I've failed a lot. Do you help people through your experience from failure, or is it more from your experience through success? And please don't say both, because I think it needs to be probably one or the other.
Yeah, I actually want to correct something because I used the word failure because
Yeah.
I didn't, people are comfortable with that word. I am absolutely someone who believes with all my heart that there are no failures,
Yeah.
right?
I'm with
And
you there.
so I said it. Now I'm now retracting my statement, but it just makes it easier because if you
Yeah.
go, well, I've learned lots of lessons in my life, without unpacking that, it becomes. But I truly don't believe in anything as a failure. So I have over time learned. Okay, I'm going to bore you for a second. Feel free to edit this out. But
Please do.
there used to be this time I remember sitting with a really important person in my life who said, play chess, not checkers, right? So they were talking business strategy. We've heard it. Don't think 2 moves ahead, think 5, 6, 7 moves ahead. I was listening to a podcast where I learned the concept of play Tetris. And this was a big eye opener for me because it sort of clarified what I've been doing in my life that I didn't realize. So, for those of you who don't know how Tetris, it's basically a series of blocks comes down, and you have to position the block with the other blocks on the bottom to clear the board. What makes it interesting is you don't know what's coming at you. You don't know the shape of the block. You don't know the speed. You don't know anything. All you know is in a moment, you see this shape and you have to make that shape work best to solve the game. That's what life is. We like to think that we can plan. We like to think that we have, this great strategy. And really what we need to be great at is accepting what is coming our way, deciding how we want to perceive it. Am I going to be upset? I'm going to be happy. What am I going to do? And then how do I use that to solve the problems in my life or to move forward? So that was a long round way to say, I think being adaptable and versatile and not allowing, yeah, you can be a strategic planner, but no one planned for COVID, right? Right. No one knows if oil's going up or oil's going down. What the ability to adjust on the fly and then move your business forward, I think is the most critical skill set you can have. And it's go back to the original question now. It is one that I've learned over years and years and years
Mm-hmm.
of going, oh my gosh, I failed. Wait a minute. No, you haven't. How do I make this work for my life?
John, pressure creates diamond from coal, and you just mentioned all the years that you've learned and how you're able to help businesses from that. But if you were able to, what pressure, let's talk about pressure now. What pressure keeps coming and keeps honing you? What's the one thing, or if there's one story that you could tell of overcoming this pressure that was just, or even falling to it, just impossible and yet you're able to stick to your purpose. Do you have a story like that just kind of either was so strong at one point or keeps replaying itself over and over again to kind of hone you into this precision Swiss Army knife to help businesses?
Yeah, again, you sent that as a possible question coming over, and I tried to really analyze a moment where that's happened. To be honest, I'm not dodging the question. I don't feel pressure that way.
Okay.
The pressure that
Let's
I
learn from
feel
that.
is I don't want to let somebody down, right? And so that is a constant pressure, right? Constant.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be my wife, my kids, my boss, my friends, whatever it happens to be, that's the pressure that I feel ongoing in my life. And it is what drives me every single day. But at the same token, I love pressure. I'm an adrenaline junkie. And quite frankly, as the pressure increases, it's almost better for me. I'm one of those people that, like, the more pressure there is, that means the challenge is greater, and therefore it becomes almost a good thing when there's more pressure. I see you nodding your head like
I'm waiting
maybe
for
I'm
the
not
next thing.
articulating.
How then do you activate that? A good thing is to have pressure all the time. So someone listening out there is under pressure going, wait a minute, this is never going to stop. Like, how do you overcome it?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for bringing me back on
That's
track.
okay.
So I'll give you a real practical application.
Yeah.
When a situation happens where there's a lot of, we'll use your word, pressure,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, number one is to make a list.
I love that.
And it sounds so basic and so simple, but my go-to, and I have I'm a very disciplined guy. Every morning I get up and I have my list of things and I prioritize my things. And if ever we have time to talk about time management, these are core principles. But if ever I'm in a situation where it feels overwhelming or there's a tragedy or someone needs a ton of help, the first thing I do is I sit down. Now I use Excel. It used to be a piece of paper, but I create an Excel spreadsheet and I create a project plan. Right. And then once I start forming that project plan, then you start to see it all flow and you can now create the subtasks and now you just move forward. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is move forward. You can't change. Right. I worry a lot about the future sometimes. I never worry about the past. It literally is, to me, illogical to go, I wish I would have. Right. You don't know if you had what the outcome would be. And B, you can't change it. So for me, make a list, break it down to simple steps, and then start, and then move forward.
Move on. And let's talk about moving on. You've said that your biggest failure or fear is letting someone down. Mm-hmm. Have you ever let someone down? And if so,
I'm sure I've let lots of people down.
Well, can you remember of a time that you went to bed going, well, this was not a good day. This didn't work. And I mean, have you ever failed in that way? And if so, how did you overcome it? Here's why I ask it. You and me, however I'm supposed to say it, are almost the same. When you're speaking, I'm hearing that little voice inside of my head all the time.
Yeah.
Which makes me know that there's someone else out there that's got the same issues, that's worried about the same things. And I'm interested in how you overcome when you face your biggest fear.
Everyone in the organization needs to know how to sell. Sales is the strength of any company. Whether or not you're in marketing, operations, or even finance, everyone has a strong shared accountability towards driving top-line revenue. Whether or not you're client-facing or talking over the phone, you're able to build a stronger level of rapport with the clients. Everyone in the organization shares that responsibility to know how to sell.
And I'm interested in how you overcome when you face your biggest fear.
It's interesting you say when you go to bed at night. One of the keys to mental health is a gratitude journal, right? Mm-hmm. Keeping a gratitude journal. And some people write it down, some people podcast it or voice record it. At night, some people pray, right? I'm not necessarily a praying man, but maybe I am, right? I go to bed at night, and every night I go through my day and I give myself a report card about all my interactions. And I'll give myself an A here, I'll give myself a B there, I'll give myself a C there. And then I do my gratitude. Those days that I gave myself a C, a D, or an F for relationships or letting somebody down, I immediately go to problem solving. How do I fix it?
How to
Right.
fix it.
I'm not uncomfortable with controversy. Right. So if someone's uncomfortable with me, or I've done something to bother someone, whether it was my fault or not, I am going to address the problem. If I've let somebody down, I'm going to sit with them. I'm going to figure out how to solve it. If I failed in a mission, we're going to go figure out how do we make the best of it. Mm-hmm. We're always moving forward.
Always moving forward. And you're never trying to go back and fix the thing that you did. You're trying to move it proactively towards the positive column. I wonder what your grade point average is. So you have all these lists and you give yourself A's, B's, or C's.
Are we grading on a curve?
Yeah, no.
Right. Maybe, in my brain, I expect a lot of myself. So I'm probably a B, or B minus. If I was an A, I'd stop trying, right?
Yeah, well, that's the way it works, especially if you're an adrenaline junkie. You're like, well, what's next? How can I do better than this?
I think what's really important though, Bryan, and I think, for your listeners and whatnot, and this really is this book that someday may hit the shelves, the core of it is this steeped in a Stoic philosophy, which is the only thing you can control is how you perceive and then how you react. Yeah. And we have complete choice over that. And so if something didn't go the way it was planned to go, we have a choice. We can wallow in it, we can cry, or we can analyze it, decide what we've learned, and then we can decide how we're going to move forward. And that is what I try to do as best I can every day.
Yeah. And so I want to drive back one more time to your why, and I'm interested in why. So you mentioned a little bit about your past. You mentioned a little bit about some failures and successes and things of that sort that have shaped your life. Mm-hmm. Your why is to affect people in the very best way that you can. I don't think I got that probably, but that's the idea. Why is that your why? What drives you to that?
Well, multiple years of therapy a long time ago told me it's because I had two parents that were cold and uncaring, and didn't get along. And as the youngest of 6 kids, it was my job in my brain to make everybody happy. And so that's who you become as an adult, right? And so, mom complains about dad complains about mom. For some reason, I was placed as that person in the middle, right? And so, I think that's where it started. And then it formed. I was talking to a gentleman who's actually he's an addiction counselor in recovery. He was a fascinating guy. And we got talking about this one day. It was the first time I met him. He's an ex-military guy, and I was talking to him about him. And he said, John, you do understand that that's also what you were taught in the military. And it never really dawned on me, but in the military, you basically go through basic training and they strip you of yourself. And then they rebuild you to worry about saving or leading your team, working with your team with a sole purpose of defending your country. And so you take this kid who had that already built in, right, that suddenly joins the military because you have nothing else, and they reinforce that in a super good way, right? And you come out of that with this superhero complex, right? Like your sole mission in life is to take care of everybody else. Now, it's a little, look, it's not my job to take care of everybody else, and nor am I capable of doing it, right? And sometimes it's really annoying. Because
for you or for them,
help, right?
I don't want your help. That's right. Leave me alone, John.
Yes, but that is absolutely unequivocally what drives me, and I'm very aware of it. And I try to modify it at times when it's too much. But on the same token, I'm the guy you want when the ship is going down.
Yeah, that's right. And let's talk about that ship going down. They say when you're on an airplane, put the mask on first so that you can help others. The hurdles and the pressures that are coming over the horizon that are going to change things are either going to be your hurdles and pressures to make you better so that you can help businesses, or they're the hurdles that businesses are going to face. And I'm interested in your thought moving forward for you and for your industry and for your business and for your book. What are the hurdles that are going to come towards your success? And are they your hurdles, or are they the business hurdles that you're going to try to help?
Yeah, great question. I've exceeded every expectation I ever had of myself. when I got out of the Army, I was going to be a surveyor. I could make $35,000 a year, and that was great. And then I landed a job making $7 an hour in retail, and it worked out for me, right? My kids are grown and doing well. My house is paid for. So I'm at a point in my life where there are no hurdles from a financial, from a growth company, like none of that is
the
important.
Fear that you were talking about. There's not much fear out there for you. Yeah.
Correct. Which is a wonderful place to be.
Unless you're an adrenaline junkie who's afraid of heights.
Right. And so to answer your question, any hurdles will be self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Right. Which is for many people.
Yep.
Right. But any hurdles will be self-inflicted where, I get impatient, or I start to overthink, or I dig in too deep. I try too hard, or I care too much. But look, I'm almost 60. I've got a process now to where I can catch myself. I'm by far a finished product, but at least I'm at a place now where if I start to see myself spiral, or I start to see myself get to where I'm pushing too hard, that I recognize the trigger. I can take a breath. I can step away. I can make my list. I can reprioritize and then step back in. So those things are very much mitigated in my older life.
And then, so for the businesses that you'll be helping, what do you think the pressures are that they're going to be facing that you'll be able to help them most? What can you see along the lines coming that maybe they're either dealing with now or starting to see? What's the business world that you're able to help going to start seeing moving forward?
Yeah, this is a whole other podcast, right? But technology obviously is moving at such a rapid pace.
Yeah.
It's impossible to keep up with it, right? As a single business owner, it really is. And if you're not willing to adapt quickly, eventually things will leave you behind. The expectations of customers, whether you're a retailer, a wholesaler, employees, the expectations get higher and higher and higher all the time. And so for business owners of any size, having a network of people that they can call upon to help them navigate these challenges that are going to come so quickly, to help them whiteboard, just to get their minds. Like, I think the thing that I enjoy doing the most, that has the most impact, is sitting down with somebody and doing what you do. And you do it brilliantly, by the way. You did it with me when I was over at Serenity, right? Where I walked in your office and you asked me like 1,000 questions. And at the end of it, I don't think you were like, okay. And I walked out with all my answers, right?
Good.
That is what business owners need. And then sometimes there's some solutioning behind it.
Sure.
But for the most part, you can Google most things.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know what questions to ask. And so understanding that piece becomes super important. That would be number one. And then again, I'm going to keep just beating the drum on process and time management. It is such a challenge for most people. If you're not good at some fundamental principles around it, you'll constantly be spinning.
Yeah. Good. And if businesses or people are dealing with some of these things or all of these things, and they think that maybe you could help them, how would they find you? How would they reach out? What are they thinking about? It's a great way to ask this question, actually. So there's your contact information coming. There's someone listening right now. What are they thinking about or struggling with or thinking inside that you would love to hear that question so that you could go help them? What does that person kind of sound like right now?
If I'm a business owner out there and I'm listening to this podcast,
yeah,
I would reach out to me.
Okay.
And just have coffee.
Okay.
And let's just talk.
That's how you and I got to know each other, isn't it?
100%, right? I can put together a menu. I can put together a list of things. I have a website you can look at, all of those lovely things. But at the end of the day, it's sort of like when you go to your doctor for the first time as a general practitioner, right? And you sit down, and the best doctors are the ones that sit with you for an hour and they listen, right? And at the end of it, they go, okay, this is what I hear. I can't help you, or I can help you. This is where I think you should go, right? That, and by the way, I would never charge for that. I love it. Like, building relationships is the same. And I've done more free work than I care to mention, but that's okay. That's what drives me. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a clear answer, but there is no clear answer. Every single business is unique and every business leader is unique. And it's the conversation that leads us down the next path.
And the conversation is the most important thing. It's
Yeah.
interesting it's interesting when you're talking about technology. And I'm a big fan of education. I'm a big supporter of education in the process, and that's changing ridiculously because I no longer need to know who created the cotton gin. AI knows that for me if I'm ever interested.
Oh,
You know what I mean? I don't have to
I was trying to think of the answer.
Eli Whitney. See,
yes, it was.
Isn't that funny? That was drilled into me like in third grade, and yet I still know it. And yet in the future, I don't need to know that stuff. Maybe I didn't even then. I need to know, though, what to ask. That's where the future of business and consulting and teaching and how can you teach me to challenge the system? I read something recently. I'm reading an autobiography of Elon Musk, and he was deciding whether to get a doctorate or start building something in Silicon Valley. And he said, I could get a doctorate from Stanford, and then I'd really know that I'm not able to accomplish something because that we only know what we know, but we don't know what we don't. Anyway, I'm getting on a soapbox.
No,
I think it's an amazing opportunity.
The core principles in my book is be curious.
Yes, you got to.
Be curious. It used to be curious, not judgmental, which is not mine, but I've modified it to be curious and persistent because you can be curious, but then you have to dig in, right?
Got to dig in. Yeah, absolutely. How do they contact you?
J. Liebler at RSC Insights, INSIGTS.com. That's also, you can go on my website, which is the same, or 330-283-6449.
Yeah. And we're going to have all that on the podcast, on the video podcast. Say it again slower, how people would reach out to you specifically.
Oh, so I would email me at jliebler, Liebler, at RSC Insights, INSIGHTS.com.
That's for the people listening on Spotify and Apple, and everybody else on YouTube can take a look at the sign at the bottom of the screen. So, folks, that's John Liebler, and I tell you what, I firmly believe everything he said. There's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of people that will say, "I'm just here to help you. I don't care. I'm just here to help you. I don't care." I don't think that's John. And the reason I don't think that's you, John, is because that's not me, and I can see you. I can see me in you, and I can see you in me as far as what drives us. And that's why I believe you when you say it. I think there's a lot of people that'll kind of hide behind false marketing and then sell someone down the river. I think there's a lot of that in the consultant and in the marketing world.
Yeah, here's the thing, Bryan. I know you're wrapping up. People judge others based on how they judge themselves.
Well, then that's what just happened. Yep.
That's right. And to your point, there are altruistic people in the world. Right. Now, that's not saying I want to do it for free.
That's right.
But when you set aside your desire to make money and your desire is to help your customers, you will make money.
I put that when someone says, how much is it, how do you charge for this? I say, I just love to help people. Every once in a while, someone pays me for it.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Right. So, John, thank you for sharing this, and thank you for being a part of this show. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for being at a moment in my life where I needed to understand some of the things you were just talking about today, about being not afraid of your fears, about overcoming things through consistency, about facing things. You were there, and I appreciate that. I'll never forget it, and I hope that someone else out there listening will take advantage of that opportunity and reach out to you.
All right, my friend, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
That's John Liebler. He is the founder and owner of RSC Insights. He's also got a book coming. I'm going to put the title of that book to come because I'm going to put it on there, John, so that you got to finish that book. So that's the idea there. So we're going to put that title. Plan. Hey, John, real quick, what's the title again?
Life Lessons from a Slightly Neurotic Overthinker with a Superhero Complex.
That's John Liebler. He's our guest on Purpose Under Pressure, brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at bryanmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week. Hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you next time on Purpose.